Welcome back to the Lift Free and Diet Hard podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Coates. Join me along with industry leaders and friends on a quest to get more people through the gym door and eating and living healthier. Join me where evidence meets empathy while rejecting fitness industry fads and extremism. Let's begin. Natalia, Melo, my friend, it's great to have you back. We were just in Dallas speaking at the Raise the Bar not too long ago, got to hang out. And for any of you guys who's not overly familiar with Natalia, well, she's a former Olympia champion, and not a lot of people get to make that claim. And you have a very successful coaching business, lots of public speaking, and it's great to have you on. We're going to dive into a lot of self-limiting belief today, because that's a problem for a lot of people.
First, thank you for having me. I love coming in podcasts of people that I'm personally friends with. I just think that the conversation normally flows so well. Always a pleasure to be on your podcast. So thanks for having me. And I'm excited for the topic because we've had conversations, like as friends about this kind of stuff. And you know that it is my gem. So I love that you picked this to be the topic for our chat.
There'll be a little bit of filter here because I think there are people, I want to get your thoughts on this. I think people gravitate to kind of one of two mindsets. I think you hear this phrase, high agency. We can define that. There are people who tend to go the other way. So they are low agency. They tend to gravitate towards victim narratives. They tend to have a victim mindset. They tend to have an external locus of control. They believe that the world and all the things around it are beyond their control, and therefore they are victims of circumstance. And so what is the problem with that mindset?
Can I take a few steps back? And I mean, I don't want to make it a few like the Natalia Melo show.
Please, no, but, you're the guest, you're the star.
But I think that kind of giving a little bit of a background on how I got here gives a lot of context, because it's so interesting that you picked this topic, because this morning I woke up to a comment on a YouTube video that I made. And it was like, I was actually taking notes to record a podcast about this. So that's quite crazy. So taking a few steps back, I moved to the US from Brazil when I was 20 years old with $350 to my name. I dropped out of law school. In Brazil, law school is a bachelor's degree. Hold on, I got a cough. Sorry. It's a bachelor's degree. So I was halfway through it because I got in it when I was about 17. When I was about 20, I looked around and I just felt that there was more to life than just rinse and repeating what everybody else around me was doing. So I sold my car, paid some like little bills that I had, and what I had left was $350, moved to the US. That's what I had. I worked cleaning restaurants from 11 p.m. to 7 or 8 a.m. to earn $30. I, lived in a place that was covered in cockroaches. I did whatever job needed to be done in order to make ends meet, because I had to survive. I ate from the dollar menu for months because that's all I could afford, gathering the quarters in my car to be able to buy the chicken nuggets from Wendy's. So, and I could see here and be like, oh my goodness, poor me. But I wouldn't be the person that I am today had I not gone through those experiences. Did they suck? Absolutely. I mean, when I won the Olympia, a lot of people don't know this. I was bartending a few days before winning the biggest bodybuilding competition when everybody else was resting. Why? Because I knew that I was going to take some time off from work to be able to compete at the Olympia. And I had to pay my bills. And at the time I worked 3 jobs, not 1, not 2, 3. And I could have walked into the Olympia and being like, poor me, oh my goodness, everybody has it so much easier than me. But how is that going to help me? I had the choice. I had choices to make. I could make the choice of caving and throwing myself a pity party, which would have allowed me to accomplish absolutely nothing. Or I had the option of embracing it and being, and kind of like almost telling myself, I'm freaking badass, because if I'm able to do this, what else can I do? So I think it really is about that mindset shift. And that's how it has been for me for many different circumstances in life. I think that everything happened, you have the option of looking at everything that happens as something that is happening to you and for you. And I'm a big believer that everything that happens in life, you can get something as a lesson from it. And it is a choice that you get to make. And I know, I'm not here advocating for the, toxic positivity that is like, oh my God, like we need to be positive. No, it is okay to navigate your feelings. It is okay to process things. It is okay, to acknowledge if there have been some traumatic experiences that you've had. But there is only so much like ruminating and marinating on the bullshit that you can do until you decide to pull yourself out of it. Because the way I look at it, you have one life. I can either choose to live that life, feeling sorry for myself or making the best of the time that I have on this earth. So I think that answers your question. No, I don't know.
Well, there's a lot more here. Why do you think people choose the victim narrative?
Because it removes agency. The moment that you place blame on something outside of yourself, you remove it's no longer your fault. And I think that is really that paradox, because people think that placing blame on something outside of themselves is it's quote unquote solving the problem, but in reality just keeps on digging a bigger hole. Because how are you going to be able to get yourself out of a situation if you're placing the blame on something that is outside of yourself? You can't, because you're putting that power in somebody else or something else. And I see people doing this, with children, with partners, with work. And that is not to say I have 2 kids. I'm married. I work. We own 3 businesses. I have my coaching business, and my husband and I have a real estate business, and I have my supplement company business, and I do speaking events. So I do have a lot of irons on the fire. But I can see here and be like, oh my God, or I can look at it and be like, holy shit, like that's amazing. Like, how lucky am I to have all these opportunities? How can I maximize and make the best of it? So I understand what it is like to be busy and to have a lot of things happening and to, have to put out fires. But it is a decision that every single one of us get to make, to take ownership of what we can do. Oh, life is busy. Okay, it is busy. Did my reality change after I had 2 kids and we moved to a country that we had zero help with anything? 100%. But what can I do with the time that I have? That is the only thing I can control.
Why are people scared of responsibility? Because you were saying about agency, it's like when people have a victim mindset, then I believe it absolves them of a sense of responsibility over their circumstance and their outcome. So let's go here instead. How is that serving someone? Because I believe that someone is on some level, it's protecting them. It's protecting their identity or their ego or both. So what do you think's going on there?
Fear of failure. Ultimately, it is just like a fear of failure. As humans, we are we have an ego. In the moment that you kind of like how you're saying, like the identity, the ego, the moment that you put yourself out there to do something and take ownership of your actions, it is a risk. Everything in life is a risk. And I think that that's the part that a lot of people miss, because they will be, and that's conversations that I have a lot with a lot of members in my community, in my program. Before they join, they're like, oh, I'm afraid of failing. And I'm like, well, you're 75 pounds overweight. You haven't gone on a vacation with your family because you're embarrassed to wear a swimming suit. You don't take photos with your kids, and you haven't had sex with your husband in about a year and a half. Can you get any more failed than this? But that's the status quo. And then the moment that they step out of the status quo, it's if it doesn't quote unquote work, then they're going to have to acknowledge the failure. But whenever they're just like marinating on the puddle of shit that they have created for themselves, they can just pretend that that's how it is, when in reality it isn't. And I think it's interesting because this is something that I have a perspective from being an immigrant, you know, whenever, and you know, you moved from different places in Canada. So I think you're going to resonate with this as well. Sometimes when you go back to the place that you were raised, you look around and everybody's still doing the same shit that they were doing, you know, when I left, and complaining about the exact same things. And, you know, they're still broke. They're still complaining about not having, you know, the family that they wanted. They're still partying like a rock star. They're still doing the exact same thing. And then they wonder, oh, you know, it's like the people here. No, you have the choice of creating change, whatever that change looks like. Maybe you need to change your environment, but you have the option of doing it. And and I think that that's I think the thing that pushes me the most is I'm petrified of getting to my deathbed and wonder like what could have, would have, should have. And in order for you to think like this, you have to embrace failure.
Do you think that people hold on to the narrative that, well, as long as I don't make an effort, then I have, there's no evidence that they failed, and therefore they always have that bullet in the chamber to say, well, I could, but life's too busy right now.
A hundred
Is that what's going?
percent. That is a cop out. That's like a way out of responsibility. But what they don't understand is that it's kind of like the metaphor of the frog in the boiling water. I don't know if you know, but I'm gonna tell your listeners. It's kind of like, and I don't even know if it's true, but I think it's a cool concept. So let's pretend if it is true that it is true. It's that you put a frog in a pot, and then you start to slowly boil the water, and by the time the frog realizes that it is like the water is coming to a boil, it is too late for it to jump out of that boiling water. And I think that that's kind of what happens because, you know, in the concept of fitness, let's not even talk big picture, kind of like life. In the concept of fitness, nobody goes from, you know, being, I don't know, like 125 pounds to 180 pounds overnight. It happens gradually, kind of like the frog. So in their mind, they're like, oh, I'm not failing. It might not be in here using the assumption that weight gain is a representative of failure because it does have a negative impact on your health. Okay. I mean, it might not be a significant, drastic change overnight, but every single day that you choose to do nothing, you're failing because you're pushing yourself closer to poor health, poor quality of life, not being able to live your life to the fullest, not being able to, you know, truly enjoy life. Because I feel like it's not talked about enough how much it consumes, especially women, when they don't feel their best in their bodies. We like it's a conversation that is almost like people talk on the sidelines, but there is a study that shows that women think about how they look. It's like nine to 15 times a day. So we can see here and pretend that it's not a problem. And even from like, you know, from a career standpoint, if women are thinking about how they look that many times a day and you need uninterrupted, concentrated work to thrive, you're interrupting your workflow at least 8 times a day, once per hour, thinking about how you're spilling out and how this top doesn't look good. Oh, is somebody looking at me? Oh, I would love to stand up and speak up. I've spoken with women who were an engineer for NASA who didn't speak up in their career and were probably one of the smartest people in the room because they were embarrassed about how they looked. Is that not a failure? I think it is.
There's something you said there, the frog in the boiling water metaphor. It works the other way too, because I think for anybody who's listening who's used to functioning at a very high level of productivity and doing a lot of things, especially, I'm not a parent, but I look at parents and you kind of go, well, how in the world do the parents who manage the balance of raising kids, working career, and also maintaining fitness habit? But they do it. The people who do it because it also gradually boiled over time and incrementally became, now I'm sure there were big jumps, having the kids being born literally is a seismic shift in life, but I think the total volume of what you do gradually adds up to the point where it becomes your normal and you don't question it. But no one's going from minus 100% to plus 100% on a full spectrum swing on
Mhm.
lifestyle. So it does have to start gradually. Okay, so what have you found works when you're having conversations with the people you've coached to get someone out of that deeply rooted ego protective, fixed identity, victim mindset to at least disrupt that so that way they're now open to change?
I think that the first thing, I don't like that's something that I say all the time. I cannot convince somebody that they need help. It is not my job. If I get on a call with somebody and they're expecting me to convince them that they need help, I tell them, like, I literally did this a few weeks ago. I told the lady, I was like, I don't think that this call is productive. I want you to, we're going to hang up. I want you to take 2 weeks. We're going to reschedule the call. You can cancel if you want, but I need you to really thoroughly examine where you are and where you want to be and see if you're going to be able to get there. So I think that taking ownership and acknowledging first and foremost that what you're doing is not working is the first step. Nobody can convince you otherwise. You are not going to be ready for change until you acknowledge that what you're doing is not working and that where you are is not where you want to be. That is like acknowledging that for me is the first big step towards change. Without that, it doesn't matter how incredible and amazing, the program is and the coach can be like babysitting you. It's not going to work because it's not coming from within. You haven't acknowledged, you haven't realized the negative impact that it is having on your quality of life. And I think that what happens, especially with women, I can't speak for men because I do not work with men, is that women tend to keep themselves incredibly busy to not acknowledge the negative impact that not being where they would like to be is having in their day-to-day life.
Men do that too. Explicitly, men keep themselves distracted with pursuits that to not have that discomfort forefront in their minds.
Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, and then I'm gonna be at like the PTA, and then I'm gonna sign up, and I'm gonna be in every single birthday party that I get invited to, and then I'm gonna sign my kids up for 27,000 different activities, preferably club sports, because that is even more demanding. So I can tell that is my kids' fault, and they're traveling that I'm not able to do that. But it's because they don't have clarity on what the goal is. They don't have clarity on what they're even doing. And by keeping themselves busy, they can justify their lack of action with the busyness of life. And then they just keep on saying yes to everything.
What would you say to someone who would claim that that effort would actually be finding fulfillment in things other than your physical appearance? Because I know you've already mentioned how you're primarily talking about someone's metabolic health, right? Physical
Yeah,
appearance and confidence is a piece of a bigger puzzle. But what would you
it's a
say to someone
byproduct.
who's, yep, what would you say to someone, well, that they're just finding fulfillment in things that aren't rooted in their appearance?
Hold on, I'm writing it here so I don't forget.
Good.
Fair. I get it. I have 2 kids. We love to travel as a family. If I didn't feel my best, if I wasn't, somewhat like a able body, would I be able to experience, skiing with my kids? Be able to drag them, whenever we are tobogganing? Would I be able to drag them up the mountain? Would I be able to, go on a trip on the beach and feel comfortable getting up and running with my kids and playing with my kids? Because I encourage anybody listening here, next time that you go to a beach or a water park or a cruise or anything like that, I want you to look in the water who is playing with the kids. 9 out of 10 times is the dad. The mom is sitting all covered up under the shade, sometimes even like in not even in a swimming suit. That is not by accident. You don't go to the beach in capris intentionally because you think that is the outfit that goes with the environment. Women are wearing that because they're uncomfortable in their bodies. And is that like, do you want to be a spectator on your family's lives? Do you want to be somebody who is on the sidelines just watching, your partner, your kids live their lives, and then you're just sitting there watching because you're uncomfortable in your body? You want to, even within the marriage, like, do you want to use 50,000 excuses to not be intimate with your partner when the reality is that you're not doing it because you don't feel comfortable in your body? So if we were to talk about fulfillment, is that fulfillment? Are you really truly being able to bring your best self to the people that you claim to love the most when you're not taking care of your health? Are you going to, like, let's say you keep on gaining weight and there is a history of, like, what I think the last data was that 72 or 73% of the American population is either obese or overweight. So, like very, very high rates of heart diseases, heart disease, diabetes. I'm yet to speak to a person, like I would say that 8 out of 10 people that I speak to, there is somebody in somebody's family that has diabetes or heart conditions or high blood pressure or something.
Statistic that's coming out of, and I've seen this, I can't remember what, medical association is, but that 85% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. Okay, that's terrifying.
Correct. So, and I can say, oh God, I'm going to try not to cry. And I can say this because I'm watching my mom at 65 deteriorate. And she's always been somebody who never took care of her health, never took care of her metabolic health. It was always about just losing the weight at all costs. And my mom is not going to be here to watch my kids graduate high school. So, and I feel like a lot of people have some kind of example like that in their lives, be that a mother-in-law or a parent or an aunt or a sibling. That is you if you don't take care of you. So what is the point of trying to be everything for everyone and fulfill this, thing, this ideal that you have in your mind, if you're not going to be here to watch your kids graduate college? What is the point?
It's powerful. Let's backpedal for a second. There's something I like targeting whenever I'm having a conversation with anyone, and this is almost like the starting point with every client I work with, almost every conversation at this point, is getting people to realize that there are absolute facts and truths, and everything else is a story and a narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, quote, the laws of physics. But if you get someone who says a reason why they're not doing something, right? That's usually the root of it. And usually this is in the context of health promoting behaviors. And then I never approach this with judgment. Judgment doesn't work. Shame doesn't work. But it's to ask them, what's the story? What's the narrative? Those terms are completely interchangeable about why you believe this. And then if I can, in a very gentle way, get them to realize that this is not a fact about you. This is not a fixed identity thing, but it is a story and a narrative. Now, on some level, that story and the narrative is serving you. It is keeping you where you are. It's protecting you. It's protecting your identity. And it's not to say, hey, we now need to change this, but it's to open the door to say, it is not an explicit fact. It is a belief. It is a story, and that you are using to keep you in place. And once you start there, then you open the door to change, and then just continue to have that conversation. And then you start asking, well, why are you telling yourself this story? Why are you buying into this narrative? How is this serving you? Because I think at every level, people won't change and believe in these narratives because it is serving them now and it's protecting them.
Mm-hmm. 100%. And it's interesting. The first thing that comes to mind whenever you're describing this is I work with a lot of high level women, like, CEOs, like attorneys in big law companies, like partners, they're pulling 70 hours. My demographic is primarily corporate women. I really resonate with that demographic. We get each other. Like personality is the same. There is not a lot of like dancing around to say something. What I say is what I say, and what they say is what they say, and there is no in between the lines. So that's my people. Anyhow, So I'll be speaking with someone, and I can think of a couple of clients very specifically. I remember in the initial conversation, they'll say, I don't know. I'm like, so why do you think that you're not, able to accomplish X goal? Oh, I don't know. Like, I think I'm just lazy. And I just start laughing. I don't know. I'm like so undisciplined and I'm like so lazy. And then I just let them kind of ran ragged on all the names that they have for
And
themselves on how
this is a
incompetent.
CEO of a successful company saying that
Right.
they're lazy, right?
Right. And so I just listen to them. And this is right after they tell me that their kids are involved in like 27,000 different sports and they're working 70 hours a week and that their husbands also travel for work and that they're also the caretaker for their parent. And like, I'm tired just listening to all the shit they do. And whenever they finish telling me about how lazy and terrible and like undisciplined and horrific they are, I'm like, okay, fair. And I'm like, okay, so you went to this school and you graduated with honors. Do you think lazy people are able to do that? And like, no. And I'm like, right. And I'm like, and then you went to, I don't know, like we have a few Harvard attorneys. And I'm like, you went to Harvard. Do you think lazy people and undisciplined people and people who don't give a shit, like they're going to be able to go to Harvard? Oh, no. And I'm like, and do you think that somebody's going to be able to be a partner in a big law and work 70, 80 hours a week while still managing kids' sports in a partner that travels if they are very lazy and very undisciplined? And they go, oh, no. And I'm like, so how do you have the nerve to tell me that you're lazy? And they just start laughing. They're like, oh my goodness, I never thought that way. So I love doing this with these women because it just sounds crazy to me that they call themselves like lazy and oh my, so undisciplined. And that's the way I like to look at it. I'm like, I've won the biggest bodybuilding competition in the world. I used to train 6 hours a day. But if I were to try to do what I did now, I would be having a mental breakdown. Would you call somebody who has won the biggest bodybuilding competition in the world somebody who is undisciplined? And they were like, oh my God, no. And I'm like, right. Would you call me lazy? Oh no. And I'm like, right. I just have the wrong plan for the season of life that I'm in. And the moment that you're able to accept that, that's when things change.
There's a story that I heard Dr. John Berardi, who's a very influential
Yeah.
figure in the fitness industry, very close friends with our friend Molly Galbraith. So
Yeah.
if anybody doesn't know who John Berardi is, it's definitely worth plugging into his media.
Precision nutrition, right?
Yep, he's the founder, co-founder of Precision Nutrition, so a very successful company. And he was telling the story in a podcast, and I may be paraphrasing, but I think I have the substance right. He was having dinner with an old friend. They knew each other very well. And that friend knew John, PhD, and founder of this successful company. And this friend was telling him that the friend knew the way to quote, something, lose the weight, get healthy, get in shape, etc. Right? They're probably, I think at the time they're probably maybe in their like mid to late 40s. And so John is kind of there going, uh-huh, uh-huh. And the guy, starts to talk about it. And it's basically some version of, a few hours a day in the gym, a bunch of running, and just kind of brute force, overwhelm of fitness, which is something that we can, and a lot of us did in our 20s. I mean, that's certainly the way that you ended up on the Olympia stage. And it's a skill set that a lot of us learn when we're younger. Maybe we played a lot of sports and we could out eat our nutrition at the point, or we could actually do fairly extreme things with nutrition. But here's the problem. People believe that that's the only way.
Only
And
way.
and then of course lives change, kids, careers, etc. And it becomes a very convenient narrative to say, well, my life is different. When I get the time, I have the system, I know how to do it. But until I get the time, and who among us here has ever found that time suddenly and magically for extended periods of time opens up? We have an abundance of it, and then we can suddenly engage in this. Now, one more quote, and then I want to hear your thoughts. And it's an Alex Hormozy thing. It's one of his pithy little posts that I like and I've shared. It's like the best way to train yourself to be successful is to do it when you're already busy. Because if you wait until you have more time, then you are training yourself that when life gets busy again, which it invariably will, you're training yourself to quit.
Do you know what is the time that I get the most done in my life, in business, in all of it? Whenever my kids are in school, which means that I have, like, my husband is a teacher. So he coaches 3 sports. So he's out of the house Like some days, like today, he left at about 4:30 so he could go to the gym before, and he won't get home until 9:30 p.m. because there's a track meet after. So, I I think that whenever my life is all this like craziness, is when I get the most done. Why? Because I can't procrastinate. I cannot leave things. Like if I wake up and I get myself ready and I do some work before the kids wake up, take them to school. If I don't use that window of opportunity that I normally work out at, there is no, oh, I'll get it done later, because there is no later. It's then or never. And I think that that's that shift in thought that I feel it can be beneficial to a lot of people. It's like, what if we looked at all the things that we have to do in life as a guardrail to tighten up our schedule? Because that's something that I see a lot of times, even with the ladies that I work with. Summer comes, they're a mess. And technically speaking, it's less busy because your kids are off school. It's more lax with the time that you can drop them off in like summer camps and stuff like that. But that's when a lot of people crumble. So and this idea of waiting for whenever everything is perfect, one is a idiotic, idealistic idea of something that is not going to prepare you for real life, because life is seasonal. And I just recorded a podcast with Dr. Joey Munoz. Love him. And he even talked about like seasonalities. Life is made of seasons. And if you're always waiting for the season where you perceive that everything is perfect and everything is chill and everything is that, if that is the only time in which you commit yourself to taking care of your body, you are never going to get out of the cycle of all or nothing, all in, all out, because you're not equipping yourself to navigate the more challenging seasons. It's kind of like whenever, so I don't know about much being a pilot. We've worked with some pilots, but I assume that whenever you're preparing to be a pilot, you don't just get trained to fly the plane when the sky is blue and there is no wind and everything is perfect. You also get trained whenever shit's hitting the fan. Why? Because it is a possibility and it is going to happen at some point. So, and it is the same thing with your fitness journey. And if you're wanting this to be a for life thing, especially in as we age, like for the people that are having kids, and you then also are ascending in your career, which asks for more time from you. And then you also have aging parents that require some of your care and time. And then you also have a partner who is likely also ascending in their career and having more demands there. So if you're waiting for things to be all chill, when is that going to be? When you retire? How is that going to work? Because even for women, that can be a very dangerous territory to navigate from a hormonal and menopausal and bone health and muscle health standpoint. Because if you only start to take action whenever you are whatever retirement age is, it's kind of wanting to invest in your retirement account the day before you're about to retire. It's not going to work. You're not going to have enough money to carry yourself to the rest of your life, and your health is the same.
I like that metaphor a lot. It's reserve, and this theme's come up in previous episodes. It's muscle reserve. You got to start building it early. It's metabolic health reserve. It's bone mineral density reserve. Those have to start earlier.
Yeah, and I think that whenever it comes to that mentality of the extremes, I can get in a contest right now of extremes with anybody. We want to talk about extremes. Oh, I'm all in. I was doing, whenever I was competing at the Olympia, I was doing 5-6 hours of cardio a day. On top of working 3 jobs, I was like napping, not sleeping. Like my diet was horrendous because it was so low in calories. Like it was insanity. Like I after I competed at the Olympia, after I won the Olympia, I had a sick bucket near my bed because I literally ate myself sick. I knew every single 7-Eleven within, I don't know, like a 5 mile ratio of my house. And I would stop in every single one of them and buy a dozen cookies. And I would stuff my face in the car, drive to the next one, stuff my face because I was embarrassed to buy all the cookies in just that one 7-Eleven. So I would go to many different ones. So if we want to talk about extremes, I can talk about that all day. But that didn't serve me. Like there is no way that I would be able to out exercise that nonsense with the life that I have now. So the plan had to adjust. I don't have, if I tried, 5 hours to dedicate to exercising. I have other priorities in my life right now. So the whole idea that because you worked when you were 20, that is going to work now, it's delusional. Also, from a muscle health, bone health standpoint, yeah, whenever you're 20, you're able to get away with that because you're at the prime of your muscle development and all of that. I'm 41. If I try to starve myself the way I did then now, it's not going to work. It's not going to set me up for success for me to be able to get out the floor as, you know, my kids age and they give me grandkids. So I think it is about, you know, looking at that perspective as well.
That's a masterclass in that whole thought right there. Um, let's have some fun here.
Oh God.
What's the
Okay.
what's the problem with people using social media filters? A little bit of a departure here because I know you're not a big fan of that.
As somebody, you know, I am on social media. I'm a woman on social media. I have a daughter. Um, I feel that the overuse of filters, especially to change your body completely, is creating a detachment from reality for especially young girls. Again, I like my son could care less about like abs or anything, but I find that with young girls, it is something that I'm starting to see more like sooner with my daughter than with my son. So I think that it creates this unrealistic expectation of what a body should look like. And it's funny because like a few months ago, I posted a photo. There were two photos, and I was kind of like sat down. In one of the photos, I was kind of like stretched on a chair, and the other one, I was kind of like a little bit leaning forward. And I don't care how skinny you are, if you sit down, your skin is gonna fold. Like it just is. You can be a bag of bones with skin. There is going to be there is going to be some fold. And I posted that photo, and I like didn't really think anything of it. It's just like a body. And while I appreciate the comment that the lady left, it just left me thinking. She was like, oh my God, so amazing that you post this with the skin folding on your belly. And I'm like, but that's what a normal body looks like. A normal fit body without filters. And I've been very intentional about not even like, you know, the whole thing that Goob does on like that he's able to see who has snatched their waist. And I have been very intentional about not even wanting to learn or know what apps do that because I don't even want to be tempted to do it. So I use filters just to keep my Instagram like feed like aesthetic, like just like the color thingy. But I refuse to use anything that is gonna like fully change my body shape. One, because I think it's ridiculous, and two, what happens when people see you in person? Like you look like a bag of shit, and then they're like, "That's not you." Nah, I'm
Oh,
not about it.
I know people who everything is filtered on social media very aggressively, and they do not look like what they look like in person. And you alluded to something earlier. I do worry that someone who, if they do not like their appearance and how they show up on social media to the point where they're excessively using filters, and some people will defend it and saying, hey, they're fun. No, no, no. We know the difference. They're the people who are unhappy with some aspect of their appearance and they're filtering it to change that, smooth it out. Then I think what you're doing is you're training yourself to hate what you see in the mirror because you can't filter the mirror and you can't filter how you appear to real people in real life. And I do worry about this.
Yeah, but can I say something
Sure.
also? But with that being said, I agree 100% with you. But as someone who is more mature on social media,
Hmm.
I'm 41 years old. I'm no spring chicken. I've been like I'm from the quote unquote era, and I'm dating myself horribly right now. So break, like let's stay with me here. I'm from the time before pre-social media. Whenever I first started getting in the fitness industry, like I don't even think Instagram was the thing. And then post social media. So I have aged on social media. And I feel like women are under a lot of scrutiny
Hmm.
one way or the other. You
True.
cannot win. It's like if you decide to not do anything to any kind of like Botox, and I'm very open about the shit I do. I
Yeah.
don't particularly care. But if you don't do it, it's like, she let herself go. But then if you do it and you talk about it, you need to age gracefully. Oh my goodness, it's disgusting. What kind of example you're setting for people and for young kids. And then you have the people who lie through their teeth, who are aging, are using shit because they are like 50 years old and they do not have one wrinkle on their face, and it's like olive oil. No, bitch, it's not olive oil. Stop it. It's Botox. Let's not, no. And then people are like, see, that's how you wait. So it's almost like people are celebrating a lie.
Mm.
So I feel like that's kind of like that dangerous territory, because I have made the commitment to myself, because I think I owe this to my daughter, to be very honest about any kind of procedure that I get done. If I get Botox, I'll talk about my Botox. If I get filler, I'll talk about my filler. I had, a reverse tummy tuck. I talked about that very openly,
Hmm.
because I feel like it is owed to those people who are, especially as you are, my body is to an extent, my tool of work, in the sense that I'm in the fitness industry. So people normally tend to gravitate to people who look a certain way. It is a visual industry. So being open and honest about that, I think it's important. But whenever you're open and honest about that, you also get incredibly scrutinized. And it's like, oh, you don't appreciate getting old. And I'm like, no, I just want to get old the way that I want to get old. Can you like just shut up? And then they're celebrating the people who do it and lie. So just put that out
You,
there.
all you got to do is look at the comments on Pamela Anderson is a really good example who
Yeah.
has been out there and she's been going, I think, fairly makeup free. And obviously, she's someone who's known for a lot of cosmetic stuff in her younger days in her career. And now she's, looking in this context, I think, pretty natural. And I think there's a lot of people celebrate that, but I think there's a lot of people who are also quite ghoulish with their comments. If anybody remembers, a couple of years ago, Madonna sort of reappeared at having had a lot of work done. And even I was a little bit like, okay, I think that's taking things a bit far. But she clapped back at her detractors and she made a really good point. And I can't remember exact words, but she said something similar to what you said, that, you know, women are going to get judged either way. And there's this vicious double standard with it. And yes, you can't win if you go and you have work done, you try to look younger, you're criticized. But if you age, quote, gracefully, people will criticize you too. So, and I remember that, and that stood out to me. And it's a very public illustrations of your very point.
Yeah, and I think that especially like right now, I actually made a post recently. There is also that thing, if you're a woman who is outspoken on social, then it's like, oh, your husband must be a simp. So I think that you have a lot of people with a lot of opinions, especially younger people with a lot of opinions about things that they haven't had enough time to experience. And I think that would be like, I'm very grateful for social media, but I do think that these very extreme views on how women are being perceived, on how men are being perceived, and the expectations on men as well. You need to be the provider. If you're not, you're a piece of shit, and like all of that. I think is taking away from a society that is a bit different now. You have people living different lives and wanting to look different ways. So yeah.
And you mentioned your husband a few times, just for context. I mean, how many years did he play in, international rugby?
Oh, it's hilarious. I'm very outspoken. Roger is very chill, but like Roger is like the most badass man that you ever meet in your life. He played professional rugby for over 15 years. He played, if I'm not mistaken, over 400 matches. He's played for Ireland. He's played for what's called the Barbarians. I don't know if you know what the Barbarians is. It's like the all-star team that players get picked from, like top players get picked from different nations, and then they create a team for that, and then that team plays a national team. So it's an all-star team. And he like very successful, comes from a legacy of rugby from like his grandfather, very respected, and he's like very chill. So I think it's hilarious. They're like, your husband must be a simp, and I'm like, he probably like crush your skull, but he chooses not to. I'm the chihuahua barking in the back, and he's just like, stop talking.
That's the impression I've gotten for sure. This has been rich and wonderful. I really hope this rocks a few people's like narratives and what's holding them back. Everybody can follow you on Instagram at Natalia Melo Fit, and your name is spelled Nathalia. Okay.
Right.
Are there any other resources, places you want to send people?
Sure. I have a podcast as well called the Unfiltered Fit Life Podcast. I can send you the link. You've been on it?
I've been on it.
Yeah, a few
Shocking
episodes
title,
back.
Unfiltered.
Right. And it's funny. Whenever I was trying to pick a name, I'm like, it needs to be something that resonates with me. And then I was like, unfiltered sounds perfect. I told Roger, my husband, I was like, what about unhinged? And he was like, absolutely not. And I'm like, yeah, a bit too much. Bit too much. So yeah, Unfiltered Fit Life Podcast.
Well, I appreciate you coming on here. Obviously, you and I are great friends in the real world as well. So I'm happy to endorse you. So I hope everybody goes and checks out what you're doing. You've been on as a guest before. It takes a little bit of scrolling, but they can find you on one of the episodes that's a little bit more career centric for the coaches that love this stuff. And, for everybody listening, a couple quick things for me. I am currently in the middle of an intake for my online women's strength program. So that starts Monday, March 31st. I would love to have you guys. If you have questions, just shoot me a message on Instagram or email me anywhere that you can, follow me, shoot me a message. I'll tell you more. And I will be speaking at Swiss Montreal. That is May 3rd. And if you want more details about that, that is definitely for the coaches who are listening. I'll be doing a presentation that's going to be on injury risk and a lot of injury considerations in training. So I hope you guys will check in with me there and go follow Natalia. Thank you again, my friend. I appreciate you.
Thank you.